There are moments when what you choose reveals more about your inner state than anything you could consciously explain. Not because the choice is correct, not because it is intelligent, but because it happens before your mind interferes. Right now, you are facing one of those moments. In front of you there are 4 moons. They are not here as symbols to be analyzed, nor as objects to be admired. They are reference points and mirrors, each one activating a different psychological force within you. You will not choose a moon by its beauty, meaning, or story. You will choose by number. Moon 1, Moon 2, Moon 3, Moon 4. Before your mind starts assigning interpretations, stop. Breathe. Let your eyes rest. Do not compare. Do not search for logic. Do not ask yourself what each moon represents. Simply notice which number draws you in. That pull, subtle, quiet, almost irrational, is the signal. The moment you begin to justify your choice is the moment you move away from what this experience is designed to reveal. Carl Jung understood that the unconscious does not communicate through explanations. It speaks through attraction, through tension, through images that bypass language and touch something older inside us. Long before we learn how to describe who we are, our inner world already knows what resonates with it. That is why this choice is not random. It reflects a psychological movement happening in your life right now, whether you are aware of it or not. As you look at the numbers, pay attention to what happens internally. Perhaps you feel calm, perhaps unsettled, perhaps strangely drawn to one or resistant to another. Do not correct these reactions. In depth psychology, resistance is never meaningless. Sometimes we are not drawn to what feels safe, but to what is necessary. This experience works because it ignores the rational mind and reaches a deeper layer of the psyche, the layer where emotional patterns, unspoken fears, and silent desires operate beneath conscious control. Many people spend years trying to understand themselves by thinking more, analyzing more, searching for answers. Yet some of the most accurate insights appear when we allow the unconscious to speak first. So choose. Do not announce it. Do not explain it. Just recognize internally which number pulled you. Hold that number in your awareness for a few seconds. Each moon represents a different way of relating to your inner world, to emotional cycles, to identity, and to personal power. There is no right or wrong choice. Each one reveals a psychological strategy developed to adapt, endure, and evolve. This is not a prediction of your future. It is not a personality label. It is a signal, an invitation to recognize which part of you is asking for attention now. Jung called this process individuation, the ongoing movement of becoming who you truly are beneath habits, defenses, and expectations. Self-awareness does not always bring comfort, but it always brings truth. If you are willing to stay with that truth, write this in the comments. I chose a number without thinking. And subscribe, not for answers, but for clarity. Because this journey only works if you are willing to observe yourself honestly. Remain with the number you chose. Let it speak before you do. If Moon 1 was the number that drew you in, there is a specific way your inner world is responding to life right now. This moon speaks to emotional immediacy, not impulsivity in the shallow sense, but sensitivity in its most direct form. You feel first. You register before you explain. Your inner world reacts quickly to what is happening around you. Emotions do not linger quietly in the background. They announce themselves. Joy is vivid. Disappointment is sharp. Desire is unmistakable. When something is wrong, you know it before you can articulate why. People aligned with this moon often hear phrases like, "You're too intense," or "You take things too personally." What is rarely understood is that this intensity is not a flaw. It is a form of awareness. You are attuned to emotional shifts, to subtle changes in atmosphere, to what is alive beneath the surface of conversations and situations. Your body often understands what your mind is still trying to catch up with. There is courage in living this close to feeling. In a world that rewards emotional containment and constant composure, feeling deeply can feel like exposure. You may have learned to question your reactions, to tone yourself down, to hesitate before trusting what you sense. Yet when this energy is honored, it becomes vitality. Life does not feel dull or automatic. You experience presence, you experience meaning. The difficulty arises when emotion moves too fast to be integrated. When every feeling demands immediate action, exhaustion follows. Conflicts repeat themselves. Decisions are made before reflection has space to enter. This moon does not ask you to suppress what you feel. It asks you to create awareness between feeling and acting. A pause does not weaken your sensitivity. It refines it. Carl Jung understood that instinct is not meant to dominate consciousness, but to inform it. When instinct and awareness work together, intuition becomes guidance instead of overwhelm. If Moon 1 resonated with you, a quiet question may already be forming inside. Where in my life am I reacting faster than I am listening? Growth here does not mean becoming colder or more distant. It means learning how to stay present with emotion without letting it decide everything for you. This moon reveals a psyche that is alive, but asking for grounding. If this felt uncomfortably accurate, write in the comments, "I feel" before I explain. And subscribe, not for motivation, but for clarity, because understanding how your emotions move is the first step toward mastering them. Remain with this recognition for a moment. The next number will speak to a very different inner rhythm. If Moon 2 was the number that quietly held your attention, your inner world moves at a different pace. This moon speaks to depth and observation. You do not rush toward experience. You watch it. You let it unfold before you decide how to respond. While others react, you absorb. While others speak, you listen. While others reveal themselves, you notice what is left unsaid. Your awareness operates beneath the surface. Tone changes, pauses, contradictions, emotional undercurrents. These rarely escape you. This is not distance. It is precision. Many people misunderstand this quality. They mistake your silence for indifference, your restraint for coldness, your composure for lack of feeling. In truth, your sensitivity runs deep. You learned often early that not every emotion needs to be exposed in order to be real, so you created an internal space that is reflective, contained, and protected. A place where thoughts mature before they are spoken, where feelings are examined before they are shared. This is psychological intelligence, but containment has a cost. What is held for too long does not dissolve. It accumulates. Over time, this can appear as quiet fatigue, a sense of being present yet slightly removed, a subtle loneliness that exists even in company. You may feel understood by many, but truly known by few. This moon does not ask you to become louder. It does not demand exposure or emotional display. It asks for selective expression. Carl Jung believed that what remains unexpressed does not stay neutral inside us. It shapes mood, energy, and perception from the shadows. Your task is not to open your inner world to everyone. It is to allow it to exist outside of you somewhere. One voice, one space, one relationship where your inner depth does not have to remain hidden. If Moon 2 resonated with you, a quiet question may already be surfacing. Who is safe enough to hear what I never say out loud? Growth here is not about changing who you are. It is about preventing your strength from becoming isolation. If this felt accurate, write in the comments, "I observe before I speak," and subscribe, not for noise, but for understanding, because insight deepens when it is allowed to breathe. Stay with that awareness. Another number will speak to movement, change, and the tension between freedom and restlessness. If Moon 3 was the number you chose, your inner life is defined by movement. You feel alive when something is changing, when there is direction, when a new version of yourself is taking shape. Stability, when it lasts too long, begins to feel suffocating. Routine drains you. Repetition dulls your energy. Even when everything looks fine on the outside, you can sense when an internal cycle has ended. Something in you knows when it is time to move on, sometimes before you fully understand from what. For you, change is not chaos. It is psychological necessity. You are oriented toward becoming, not just asking, "Who am I?" but "Who am I turning into now?" This gives you adaptability. You reinvent yourself. You leave behind identities, roles, and paths that no longer feel true. Where others cling, you release. Where others hesitate, you move. There is strength in this. There is intelligence in knowing when a chapter has closed. But movement also carries a shadow. When change becomes constant, it can begin to mask something else. Not growth, but avoidance. Some emotions require stillness. Some insights only emerge when you remain long enough to feel discomfort without escaping it. If you move too quickly, certain truths never have time to surface. They wait, they follow. They return later as restlessness, dissatisfaction, or the sense that something is always missing. This moon does not ask you to stop evolving. It asks you to question the impulse behind the movement. Carl Jung warned that perpetual motion can become a way of outrunning parts of ourselves that ask for attention. Not all growth comes from change. Some growth comes from staying. Your task is to learn the difference between freedom and restlessness, between expansion and escape. Ask yourself honestly, am I moving because I am growing, or because I am afraid to remain? When movement is conscious, it becomes transformation. When it is unconscious, it becomes repetition in disguise. If Moon 3 resonated with you, write in the comments, "I change, but I am learning when to stay." And subscribe, not for speed, but for depth. Because growth only lasts when it is integrated. Remain with that insight. One final number remains, and it speaks to what has been hidden, silenced, or misunderstood within you. If Moon 4 was the number you chose, something deeper was activated inside you. This moon speaks to what has been hidden, not because it was wrong, not because it was weak, but because at some point it did not feel safe to be fully seen. This moon represents the shadow, not as darkness, but as unclaimed potential. It carries the parts of you that were misunderstood, minimized, or quietly pushed aside so that you could belong, adapt, or survive. Desires that felt too intense, boundaries you learned not to set, talents that made others uncomfortable, strengths that did not fit the environment you were in. People drawn to this moon often sensed early in life that they were different, without knowing how to explain why. So they adjusted. They learned when to stay quiet. They learned which parts of themselves were acceptable and which were not. But what is hidden does not disappear. It waits. It expresses itself indirectly, through self-sabotage, through repeated emotional patterns, through strong reactions to certain people that seem disproportionate or confusing. Very often, those reactions are not about the other person at all. They are signals, messages from parts of you that want to be acknowledged instead of suppressed. Carl Jung believed the shadow is not something to be destroyed, but something to be integrated. What we refuse to recognize within ourselves begins to control us from behind the scenes. This moon does not ask you to fight yourself. It asks you to walk alongside what you once rejected. Integration requires courage, not the loud kind, the honest kind, the kind that allows you to say, "This too is part of me." Now take a step back and look at the whole picture. The number you chose was not a label, it was a signal. Each moon reflects a force that is active in your life right now, emotion that reacts quickly, depth that observes quietly, movement that seeks transformation, or shadow that asks to be seen. But no human being is made of only one of these forces. The mistake in self-awareness is not feeling too much, thinking too deeply, changing too often, or carrying a shadow. The mistake is identifying with only one part and ignoring the others. Emotion without awareness becomes overwhelm. Silence without expression becomes isolation. Change without grounding becomes escape. Shadow without integration becomes self-sabotage. Wholeness is not balance in the sense of neutrality, it is dialogue. Individuation is not a destination, it is a continuous process of listening inward without judgment. Observe your life now. Where does tension repeat itself? Where does confusion linger? Where does something feel blocked or exaggerated? These areas often reveal that one inner force is dominating while another is being ignored. From this point forward, pay attention. When emotion rises, listen before acting. When silence feels heavy, consider where it wants expression. When change calls, question its intention. When discomfort appears, ask what it is trying to show you. This experience was never meant to tell you who you are. It exists to show what within you wants to be recognized now. If this resonated, write in the comments which number you chose. Not to explain yourself, but to make it conscious. Sometimes naming an inner movement helps someone else recognize their own. And subscribe. Not for answers, but for clarity. Because the goal is not to choose the right moon. The goal is to learn how to navigate all of them with awareness, honesty, and psychological maturity. Stay with what surfaced. That is where the real work begins. At the deepest level, this experience was never about the number you chose. The number was simply the doorway. What truly matters is the moment when you felt something before you understood it, that brief instant when the mind had not yet intervened, when no story had been built, when no identity was being defended. In that space, something honest surfaced. Most of life pulls us away from that place. We are trained to explain ourselves, to justify our reactions, to smooth over contradictions. Over time, we become fluent in describing who we are, but increasingly distant from sensing who we are becoming. Self-knowledge does not begin with answers. It begins with attention. Attention to what repeats. Attention to what triggers discomfort. Attention to what quietly insists on being noticed, even when it disrupts the image we prefer to maintain. The unconscious does not demand perfection. It asks for recognition. Nothing within you is asking to be eliminated. Not the intensity, not the silence, not the restlessness, not the shadow. Each of these forces emerged for a reason. Each one learned its role in moments when it was needed. Growth is not the act of choosing one force over the others. It is the act of listening long enough to understand what each one is protecting and what each one is preventing. Wholeness is not a finished state. It is a relationship you build with yourself over time. And the work is quieter than most people expect. It happens when you pause before reacting, when you stay with an emotion instead of escaping it, when you question an impulse without judging it, when you allow a part of yourself to exist without immediately trying to change it. What you noticed here will return in ordinary moments, in a conversation, in a conflict, in a decision that seems small but carries weight. When it does, remember this: you do not need to force insight. You only need to remain honest, because the most important transformations do not begin when something new appears. They begin when something familiar is finally seen clearly. And that clarity, once it arrives, never truly leaves.